everyone, and welcome to today's video where we are going to be focusing on trapezoids. Specifically, what is the formula to use to solve for area of a trapezoid? Why would we want to use that formula for a trapezoid? And an explanation about why that formula works. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. Sit back, relax. But before we get into anything, please take a look, take the time, subscribe, and like the video. It would really mean a lot. Okay. So first things first, when kids normally see this, what their first inclination to do would be to go back to what they know. And in this, if you're breaking apart a trapezoid, what you would end up doing is this. You would end up taking a trapezoid and splitting it into two triangles. So pulling a triangle off and pulling a triangle off and using a rectangle, and then using your previous knowledge, such as area of a triangle times 2, and then area of a rectangle, length times width. Well, that doesn't necessarily work for a trapezoid. I guess conceptually, if you think about it, it does sound like a fairly smart idea, but there's a much more efficient way to do this. Rather than breaking this apart and doing two calculations, what if I could just give you one calculation and having one calculation in order to solve for the area of this? Okay, here's what I mean. First of all, let's get rid of this. What we're going to be doing here today, we need to go back to that idea of using the information that we already know. And if I look at this shape, there is another shape that is familiar to me if I'm looking at this. And believe it or not, that shape is a parallelogram. Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, wait a second, how do I get a parallelogram out of this? Well, follow me for 1 second. What happens if I was to double this shape and spin it and then connect them? Watch what happens. I'm going to try to make this as equal as possible because they should be identical. That's probably about equal, I think, maybe. And what I have here is now a parallelogram. You can see that this line and this line create my parallelogram with two lines that have attached to it. Now, conceptually, let's think about this. Essentially, what I've done here is I've extended this line out by adding this line to the bottom. So technically, the length of this line right here is 5 centimeters plus 8 centimeters. This 8 centimeters came from there. The length of this line is 8 centimeters plus the flipped over version of this identically, which would be plus 5 centimeters. Now you might think to yourself, okay, well, why do I need to know that? Well, whenever we're solving a parallelogram, we know that the area of a parallelogram is going to have a length. And it just so happens that we now have a length. 15 and 8 is going to be the length of our parallelogram. Or, if we're thinking about it in terms of a trapezoid, our formula for area is going to be side 1 plus side 2. So B1 plus B2. We'll call this B2 and we'll call this B1. B1 plus B2. B1 and B2 right here give us the length of that line. B2 and B1 give us the length of this line. We only need one when we're solving for area. That gives us the length of that. So I'll put that into brackets because I'm going to need that a little bit later on. And then when we think about area, we know that area always deals with two dimensions. Well, we have one dimension. We have the length of that line. Somewhere on here, there is a second dimension. And it would be this guy right here, this vertical perpendicular line, which we would call height or width. In this case, we'll call it height. It just fits the formula a little bit better. So we are going to, anytime we deal with area, we have to remember that we multiply the length and the width. So we are going to multiply that by height. And then finally, what we need to do is we created an area for a parallelogram, a formula for the area of a parallelogram. But I don't want the area for a parallelogram because I could find that relatively easily. I want the area of a trapezoid. So what I'm going to need to do is cut that in half. And mathematically, we cut it in half by dividing it by 2. So this is the formula that we need to use here. Side 1 plus side 2, or B1 plus B2, times the height divided by 2 is going to give us this formula. So now that we have a formula, let's just plug in some numbers. We know that B1 was 5. So area is equal to 5 plus 8 times the height, which is 4, divided by 2. Area is equal to 5 plus 8, which is 13, times 4 over 2. Bring this up here. 13 times 4 is 52. Area is 52 divided by 2. And now you'll just notice that I'm just doing one step each time. I'm following bed mass, brackets first, then doing the multiplication as it appears, and then the division. Area is going to be equal to 52 divided by 2, which is going to be 26 centimeters squared. Now, this is important, that squared. The reason it's important is, one, because we're dealing with area, but area means that we're dealing with 2 dimensions. And this squared little 2 right here told us that we used 2 dimensions to get to that answer right there. Okay, so let's recap. What we've done here is we've created a parallelogram out of a trapezoid by doubling it and spinning it around. Connecting them allowed us to see that the length of this line is going to be the equivalent, this line right here, the equivalent of 5 and 8 together. 5 and 8 together was 13 centimeters, which we ended up with down here. We know that if we're using area, we have to multiply by a second dimension, and the second dimension that we used here was the only other dimension that we saw, which was height. So we multiplied 13 times 4, that gave us 52. 52 split in half to make sure that we get back to that trapezoid. We're going to get rid of that area. And we're going to end up dividing it by 2 in half, getting 26 centimeters squared. There is one real quick thing I just want to warn you about. Sometimes your teacher will try to trick you by adding a dimension or a measurement right here. They might throw, I don't know, let's say 5 centimeters along that diagonal line. Do not fall for that. That line is going to be longer than the height. It's there as a distractor. So what you need to have here is just ignore that guy. It's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. Formula that you need to know, B1 plus B2 times height divided by 2. And that's it. That is area of a trapezoid explained fully. If you have any questions, by all means, drop your comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. If you have any questions, comment down below, and we will work on trying to answer those in some fashion, whether it be another video or just replying in the comments. Thanks very much. We'll see you in the next video. See ya.